We all know what's going on with the Austin Holloman situation and the Passport Bro movement in Brazil. And of course, everybody's weighed in on it. I've weighed in on it. One master teacher has weighed in on it. And most recently, Fox 26 Houston has weighed in on it. But I'll get to them in a minute. But we didn't really hear from a group of people that would offer intellectual ability to this discussion. And that is, what does Brazilian men, or what do Brazilian men feel about Austin Holloman? I want to go ahead and rewind, Nemo. Let's go to the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel. It's ran by an African American who has spent 23 years off and on in Brazil, at least 9 of those years full-time straight forward. And this guy understands Brazilian culture to the T. He even speaks perfect Brazilian Portuguese. And he promised something in this particular excerpt that I want to play about the Austin Holloman situation. But let's come back and play that and we'll get to it.
Share my thoughts on what's going on with this passport bro by the name of Austin Holloman. I've been doing a number of videos as of late on my channel just talking about the environment in Brazil. When I first discovered this whole thing about passport bros, you know, mostly black men traveling to Brazil in pursuit of, let's be real, some of them are in pursuit of long-term relationships with Brazilian women. Some of them are just down there seeking sexual adventure. I mean, let's just be real. From everything that I've seen, the comments that I've read, the videos that I've heard, you just get the distinct feeling that some of them, the difficulty is that you can't tell who's there for what. I've made videos about why the question, a lot of Brazilian women ask the question, why does the Brazilian woman have a certain image to gringos or foreign men? I've talked about the fact that along with the rise of black identity politics in Brazil, you also have the rise of black feminism. So all of these things are going on at the same time. And I just felt all this time that particularly passport bros were making such a simplistic representation of what they thought of Brazilian women. And I've known a number of Brazilian women over the years who have written their thoughts about how they feel when people stereotype them simply because you put the two words Brazilian and woman together. I had one of my friends down in Minas Gerais, and I'm going to interview him one of these days. After he saw a video with 2 black American men discussing Brazil, he called me up like fuming. He was like, "Mark, we have to record a video. These black American men don't understand ish about Brazilian women. You, a black American who lived here, you need to go online and talk about what Brazilian women are really like, because these passport bros don't get it."
You see, he promised at some point to deliver an interview from a Brazilian man that he calls JJ. Now, JJ, to my surprise, speaks very good, understandable English, which is quite unique for most Brazilians living in Brazil. I've been there and it was quite hard to find a native English speaker, but he does an excellent job. And I want to play the particular clip in 2 parts. What they feel about passport bros, we'll play that, and then we'll come back and give some context.
And I want to start to make a quick disclaimer to your audience. First and foremost, I'm not here promoting anything. You know, I will just explain how this prostitution happens in Brazil and how hypocrite this thing is. And I also not hating on the guys that come down here, passport bros or even regular dudes come to Brazil to visit. They are welcome. No one in Brazil on the Red Pill community or Manosphere community will be, making videos and, threatening American guys for coming down here and do what they are doing. We don't care about this stuff. We really don't care. Because they are dealing with low tier women anyway. But here's the thing. When things like that happens, uh, it's a whole mess, because the same way we don't like that, this image, this bad image that Brazil got worldwide about being a very sexual country. The women are easy and sex tourism thing. We don't like this tag on Brazil. We don't like this stuff in Brazil.
So of course, he's saying that Brazilian men do not really care or feel threatened by the men that most of these passport bros are dealing with, because he feels that these men are dealing with women that are low quality. Now, obviously, he didn't say all of those men, but a lot of those men are low quality. And these are the kind of women that a lot of these Brazilian men don't want. And there could be many reasons for that. Number one, it could be the language barrier. I mean, it is quite difficult to communicate with somebody in an intellectual conversation or understand, socioeconomic backgrounds if the person doesn't speak Portuguese, or if that person doesn't speak English. So it makes it hard to express yourself, to, watch TV, to understand the same sort of culture that you can deal with. Like even dating somebody in other countries that speak English, like let's say Poland or, certain countries in Africa, they can still communicate, but they're not going to understand the culture as it would be with somebody from, like, let's say America or Black America. It'll be much different. Also, he's saying that a lot of those guys could also themselves not be that talented socioeconomically, meaning that, they're not the cream of the crop where they're coming from, which people typically date people that are like themselves, or these guys are just there just being sex tourists, and they're dealing with women that these guys in Brazil typically do not want and care for. So therefore, these guys don't see any real value in having any jealousy or anything towards these guys. The one thing that they do disapprove of is when these American men make these women look easy, and it makes these women look like they're just so sexually free. And it could be that Brazil is a very sexual culture, because it is. I've been there. But you don't want any foreigners to come in and make your women look like, they might be whores or something like that. But then he gives a really great example of what happened to Brazilian men when they go to other countries and try to do something similar. Because obviously Austin Holloman didn't do this, but something similar to what Austin Holloman did in Brazil in his point of view. Let's play that clip and then we'll come back.
But we have here also guys that do this overseas. And I'm gonna mention two quick big case that happened with Brazilian guys overseas doing this shit. The same shit that Austin was doing here. One case that I remember was in 2018 during the World Cup in Russia. Some Brazilian guys think that was okay being on the streets and talking with women and recording it. They were talking about people that was enjoying World Cup, and they got close to some Russian girls, blonde, and they were recording them and talking in Portuguese, and they were talking things in Portuguese that mentioned their coochies. They were saying things like, "Say with me, your coochie is pink." But they were talking, they were saying this in Portuguese, and obviously the Russian chicks didn't know what they were talking about. And this thing went viral. And all of Brazil people got mad at these guys. This thing got so big that even the Russian government got aware about the situation and expelled the guys from the country. And when they came back in Brazil, they lost their jobs. They received lots of death threats. They got canceled mad. They got really mad canceled.
So as you hear right there, some Brazilian men went to Russia, and in doing so, these particular Brazilian men were telling these women to say something in Portuguese. Now, you heard what he was talking about, and the women in Brazil were saying, hey, they were describing what their particular body part looked like, and they didn't know what they were saying. Those guys were dumb enough to put that up onto social media, and in doing so, putting that up in social media, what it did is it caused such a catastrophe that those guys got kicked out of Russia for the World Cup, and then when they came back, they got many death threats. They were fired from their jobs, and they were canceled. So it's not like Brazilian people are just doing that because it's Austin Holloman or American. They will also do that to their own men if it goes viral and it makes them look bad. The reality that he's kind of get across is that no group of men wants their women to be portrayed as easy, even if they themselves might think it's the case, or they might be more of a sexually free society. They don't want you as a foreigner to do that. Just like China, for an example. China is not the perfect place. They have slums, but the Chinese never want you to come in and record those slums and put it up, because you're going to change the mindset of what China looks like. And I think that the whole idea is that even if as a foreigner that maybe sex is easier to get, you have to be mindful of what you're trying to portray. Now, I want to kind of get into this other part before I kind of close out. That black men, when they're coming over to Brazil, they're not accessing some of the higher quality women out there that are being educated or that are in the workforce. That could be true. I'm not necessarily sure. But I do want to say that from what I understand here, brothers that come to the African countries, if they are professional guys, they tend to deal with women who are more, like I said, if they're more educated and things like that, they will tend to deal with women who are in the same socioeconomic class. You do have guys who are traveling who are not, let's say, formally educated or in those socioeconomic societies. So it is very difficult for them to reach up and marry somebody who's like a judge or a lawyer, although it could happen. But typically, if the person isn't so successful in America, it makes it difficult for that person to go to Brazil and access somebody in the socioeconomic vacuum, if it will. So that's his opinion. I'm not trying to say that it is my opinion. I've only been to Brazil once, but is this person's opinion right? Guys, check out the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel. It's an awesome channel. Again, this particular video is called Brazilian Man Speaks on Passport Bros, Image of Brazilian Women and Realities of Life in Brazil. We are supposed to do some sort of interview, maybe by the end of this month. So hopefully we'll be able to discuss some things with his experience. But guys, what do you think? It's your boy, O'Shea Duke Jackson, back at it again with another episode of Celebrity Junk. I'm out.